Thank you for joining today's webinar, Forging an Alliance Between Operations and Sales. This is a very special presentation brought to you by the PSA Project Management Committee and our Sales and Marketing Committee to discuss how operations and sales teams can improve overall communication when it comes to scope of work clarification and customer expectations. So as I mentioned, joining us today, we have members from the Project Management Committee. I'd like to briefly go ahead and introduce our panelists. We have representing the Project Management Committee as our chair is Rex Allen. Rex is an operations manager for Securidyne Systems. We also have Kyle Naylor, operations manager for Netronics Integration. We have Paul Bruhill, senior project manager for ProTech Design, and Bethany Taylor, director of operations for Dakota Security Systems. Representing sales members from the PSA Sales and Marketing Committee, we have Sharon Shaw, who's the chairman of the committee. She is the client development manager for Tech Systems. We also have Dieter Giblin, security consultant for Integrated Security Technologies. Denise Niles is the VP of Key Accounts for Advanced Electronic Solutions. And we also have Diana Roy joining us from Low Voltage Contractors, where she is in systems sales. So welcome to all of our panelists. We're very excited to have you here with us today, as well as all of our attendees out there. This is a live discussion amongst our committee members, and we do have some rules of engagement before we begin. The topic for today, just as a reminder, is clarifying the scope of work and setting customer expectations. The goal being, how can we improve communications and teamwork during that process? Today, I will be the moderator. My name is Jennifer Phillips. I am the manager of the PSA Project Management Committee, and our committee members will be providing an open, honest, and hopefully respectful response. We do want to keep this lively and fun. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started because we do have a limited time today and we want to cover as many topics as possible. Let's go ahead and start the discussion. Our first question is, how can we better share a project schedule, status update, and general progress report between project management and sales? So Bethany, from the Project Management Committee, can you go ahead and give us your take on this question?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think this is an issue that plagues most businesses, not just security integrators, so I think it's really important to get some clarification on what to do and what those best practices are. I think it's important for the sales team to have a basic understanding of the tools that their project managers use to manage those installations. Knowing what the schedule looks like and where to find it can help the salesperson access that information quickly without having to track down a project manager, because we all know that sometimes that's a little bit difficult. Those guys are in the field, they're trying to get the job done, so getting the answers from them can be a little bit difficult on the fly. Having access to that current schedule can give the salesperson, valuable information about the backlog too, as well as turnaround time on potential incoming projects. As far as status updates and progress reports, I strongly recommend establishing those requirements or preferences during that sales to operations handoff. As a project manager, letting your salesperson know what your communication style is, or for that project, what your level of involvement is in terms of the frequency and content of updates is very important. And then asking them what level of involvement they'd like to have in those updates is a big part of that. Communicating those preferences on the front side, it can avoid confusion and disappointment for everybody involved with the project. Larger projects may require some more frequent and detailed updates for everybody, whereas smaller ones might just be an email or a simple phone call. But I do think project managers put a high priority on communicating regularly with our clients and our customers. Their regular updates and progress reports and things like that is something that we're used to doing. But sometimes we can tend to forget that a salesperson is a project stakeholder too. So having that conversation during that sales to operations handoff and getting an understanding of what their expectations are and their needs are as far as updates can go a long way to improving that communication.
Okay, great. Diana Roy from the Sales Committee, can you give us your take on that? How could we better share a project schedule, status update, and general progress report?
Absolutely. I agree completely with Bethany. I think communication is key. I think, I agree with Bethany on, we need to figure out a mode of communication between operations and sales. I think there's a few things that you can do to kick off the project. Initially, a startup meeting between operations and sales can be done in-house, or Even invite the salesperson to the preliminary construction startup meeting, or both, depending on the job, intensity and what size job it is. By doing that, I think all players, contractors, the owner, and sales have a better understanding of what's expected from the group as a whole. As the job progresses, I think sales should be kept in the loop with regards to any kind of significant scope changes. Not every little thing that happens on the job, but if there's something significant, I think that sales should be kept in the loop. And like Bethany was saying, that they have constant communication. Project managers have constant communication with the field and the contractors and the owners during the job. And if that's a communication going through email, maybe we can just copy sales on it, so we're just kind of kept in the loop and know what's going on. There's a couple other things too. Job completion, I think sales should be notified when the job's done. A lot of times the job's been done for a couple weeks and we don't even know until we see a statement or something on our commission or something that says the job's closed out. And I think we miss a couple of things when that happens and we're not aware of the job final. First is that if we do know that the job is closed out and completed, then sales has an opportunity to follow up with the customer, make sure all is well and that expectations were met. Plus, it shows that you're legitimately invested in the building a relationship rather than just making a sale. Second, it provides an opportunity for sales to introduce our happy customer to the service team. And sometimes once the job is completed, we miss the boat on recurring revenue opportunities. Not only is this a missed opportunity for the company, but it's a disservice to our clients. How many times have you heard a customer say, oh yeah, you know what, I didn't even know you guys did that. If you can provide multiple services to a customer, you should probably make sure that they know that. So I think, I think it's just kind of a full circle effect for the job.
Those are definitely some good tips and recommendations, Diana. Thank you. So in addition to the scope of work, what additional items are beneficial to understanding the client's wants and needs? For this question, Rex Allen, how about you start us out and give us your take?
Absolutely. I think beyond the basic information that you get during a sales to ops turnover, there is also unwritten, relevant information that can greatly affect your performance when dealing on a project. And sometimes there's also written information from other sources that's just not conveyed during that sales operations turnover. And I think that creates one of the greatest opportunities for communications between sales and operations, because it allows you to collaborate and either develop or help maintain that customer relationship, and also manage the customer during the project and meet their expectations. A lot of times when you're trying to meet expectations, knowing the nuances and culture of the company greatly help, and that's where sales can give some incredible feedback to the project teams, the operations teams, to be able to work within that culture and deal with those stakeholders. And you have to remember that by the time you get a job, sales has already done several steps in that process where they've done either maybe a gap analysis between what the customer wants and what they're actually going to receive. They can actually do the business requirement discovery for or with the customer to help them develop that, particularly customers that are sort of new to the game. They typically interview or interact with the stakeholders, which gives them great insight into who the greatest people are as far as impact and when in the job they will have that impact. And like I said earlier on, it helps, they have a good sense of the culture, and it helps you develop your sense of the culture within the company. And that can help from things that are as nebulous as meeting the client's expectations, because when you say client, you're dealing with all of their stakeholders, and expectations can vary throughout the organization. And understanding the culture and who those stakeholders are can help that a lot. It can be as simple as just making sure you don't impact the client's operations. Knowing that every Tuesday for lunch, the managers like to get up and make speeches. They don't like noise during that time. They don't like a lot of traffic in the area during that time. Just those little things that may not impact the customer greatly, but our non-impact shows up even more because they don't even know we're there, and clients like that a lot. It can also help when there are particular liaisons or coordinators for the client that you work with on a regular basis. Sales can help you understand their needs because sometimes tweaking or doing small things can make them look good. And I make that a high priority on my list of items to achieve when we do projects, is making our coordinators and liaisons at those companies look good. Because when they look good, that means we're doing the right things, and it means we're successful in the project, at least from their point of view. It can also help from something as simple as processing a change order. Maybe things were left out of the scope on purpose because the budget wasn't there, and now they need a change order, and you have to know how to process that and who politically to deal with within the organization to get that through, or to politically have it denied again, so that the needs are still met and expectations are being met, but they're also being properly managed. And again, people say that a majority of a project manager's work is in communication, and a big part of that stakeholder management. And I said that earlier. They can help you greatly with stakeholder management, not just in how to deal with them, but if you have difficulties actually dealing with those people. And in our company, when we do change orders on jobs, we like to bring the salespeople back in as part of that touchstone. They don't necessarily need to be involved in estimating and generating that change order out to the customer, that estimate, but it gives them another point of contact to perhaps make another sale or keep our salespeople in front of their teams. And that, those people are stakeholders and they have needs, and that helps greatly. So I think it's actually a great touch point, communications between sales and operations, when we're dealing with those things that fall outside our normal statement of work and drawings, etc., that are conveyed during a sales operations turnover.
Okay. And Sharon Shaw, how about you? What do you have to say to that question?
Well, a lot. Thank you, Rex. That's a lot to follow. I think there's sort of a broad approach to take, which Rex touched on, with the culture of the organization at the client level. What are their expectations for the system? So depending on what industry they might be in, there might be compliance or auditing requirements through their access control system or video system. And so knowing maybe what their key performance indicators are up front is something that, as the project starts to be implemented, making sure that that is first and foremost in everybody's mind of that ultimate output, whatever that is, of the system that they're installing. So we try to communicate that stuff. That I know a lot of times, as Rex said, it's a conversation, it's a relationship, it's an ongoing. Many of the projects we take on, it takes 12 to 18 months really before you get that far along in the process to hand it over. As far as establishing a relationship and an understanding of the client's needs and wants. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in that period of time that, well, where is it? It's in your head. It's in, thousands of emails, So it is a challenge, I think, to make sure that it's all inclusive. But some tangible items, that we recommend is we commonly perform a risk assessment for our clients. Now, different clients have different levels of comfort, with who is getting what out of that information, out of that report. However, there are some things that we can take from that and make sure that our operations team is aware of, some of the strengths or expectations of the system. When you get that full risk assessment, not just your typical security survey of what, what's there, what's installed, and what versions and whatnot, but really a full, what are the threats and the assets that we're here to protect. And you get that whole picture. If you can share that, a summary or an executive summary of that document, that's something that we can share. On the topic of change orders, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, because as Diana mentioned earlier too, it's really important that, as a relationship manager, we're involved throughout the process and that there's follow through. And so there are always going to be opportunities to continue to prove that relationship, prove that value. And so, you know, with us, a lot of our focus is on the service on the back end. And so when we're designing systems, we always have that ongoing maintenance, that total cost of ownership in mind. But one thing we provide as part of that service is an ROI report on an annual or semi-annual basis, depending on what the customer needs. And when we're doing that, a lot of the data that needs to be used to establish that ROI is unique to each client. And so knowing going into it, what are some of those key advantages that were sold or that are supposed to be measured and tracked going forward? I think having that lit, you know, and again, in front of everybody is important. I do want to go back a step to the previous conversation, too, where we were talking about that initial, you know, the process of that handoff. And cross-training is something that I think we've kind of addressed, but we haven't said a whole lot of. And I think Bethany mentioned that, you know, she has tools and systems that she operates in. I know we use Microsoft Project sometimes to manage projects, and so educating each other on the systems that we use, you know, when we're doing estimates, educating everybody on how do we put it together. You know, I think that's a great idea, Bethany, so I wanted to share that as well.
Thanks, Sharon. And you bring up a good point, you know, regarding the handoff and the cross-training, which actually segues into my next question, is what reference documents are you including in your sales to operations turnover? And for this question, I'm going to go to Paul.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, so we require our salespeople to provide certain documentation on every folder they hand over. If we don't get that information, we usually kick it back or at least pull them in and try to see if they've gathered it and it just didn't get to us. The first is a signed proposal. Obviously, that's going to be in every single folder, but the detailed breakdown of all the parts that are included on this job is something necessary so we can go through, make sure that, you know, if there's any value engineering that can be done, we can take a look at that. Any parts that may have been missed in the engineering portion. The second one's pretty important as well. Any drawings or pictures. We do a lot of jobs at our company. I can't always get out to the customer and verify the site first. So any drawings, pictures of the doors or other areas outside that we might need to see in order to let the techs know exactly what they're getting into. This way the techs don't get on site, have to walk the site and waste a lot of valuable time walking and re-engineering themselves. And obviously we've talked a lot about it already, but the scope of work is incredibly important, but not just a basic scope of work. Any type of promises or communication with the customer is what's really important to me. I know what a door of access is or a camera is, but was there any special promises or expectations that the customer is expecting? Is that camera supposed to trigger something? Is the customer experience any issues that we need to address while we're there? You know, I've put down a little example here of what I've received just the other week. My scope of work said install working system as detailed in the proposal, and that was it. So I've got a list of parts and, hey, go make this work. So obviously you got to bring the salesperson in, go back over it, and get everything figured out yet again. So that's about all we get from our salespeople.
Okay. And Denise, how about at your company? What reference documents are?
I think Paul hit several very important items. The scope of work, of course, which is very important to know what promises were made. Along with that, a contact list. If it's a huge project, you need to know who the general contractor is or who the electrician is on site that's giving you your conduits or your power, but also the decision maker. Who's the end user? Who's the ultimate person that's going to sign off on the project, that everything is complete and they want to sign off on the warranty and the maintenance contract. The drawing, I agree completely. We usually, if not an AutoCAD drawing, then some type of pencil drawing, just showing some detail of, hey, the views that the camera should look at or where it should be located. Just whatever we can provide to give to the project manager so he or she is aware of what's needed. We also try and put together a schedule. This way there's some target dates, especially if there's a commitment to the end of the year. There's things that need to be in place because they have budget money that they want to spend.
or if it's part of a bigger project, where does security fit in, and how long we're anticipating it to take. Also included in our job planning process is any special pricing. Is there a vendor that's giving us special discounts for that project? That's important because the project manager needs to have that so he can let purchasing know. And by the way, project management won't provide purchasing with the go-ahead to order any equipment until there's a kickoff meeting internally and they're satisfied that they have all the documents. So if the salesperson has a deadline or the client is expecting certain things to happen, it really is in our best interest as a salesperson to make sure that there's no question by the project manager on the job. The PO from the client we usually include. This way we can make sure, or they can make sure, that it's apples to apples. And if there's any other departments are involved, PM is running it, but IT, as we all know, is touching every job out there pretty much. And if they're needed, what requirements do we need from them? Do they have to configure the server? Do they have to provide training at a certain time? And that'll tie into the schedule for the project manager. That's usually what we do. And sales is critical to stay in contact with project management, as we discussed before, with the change orders. And also, towards the end of the project, when there's substantial completion, there should be some documentation for that warranty to kick off and ultimately turn into a maintenance contract. So I think the relationship between sales and project management starts at that kickoff and truly continues until that warranty period starts.
Okay. And Denise, you mentioned a little bit about, and so did Paul for that matter, proposal and special pricing and talking not just with the different departments and teams. So, I'm curious, do your companies have estimating departments, or do most of your salespeople do their own estimates? If you are doing your own estimates, where do you get the data and the time estimated for the job? So for that, we'll go to Dieter. Dieter, would you answer that question for us?
Well, personally in our company, we actually have systems engineers that design the system while the sales department actually prices it out. So it's a tag team effort. We did run it before where we had some salespeople that did it from soup to nuts, but unfortunately what we found is just as taxing as the time was, there would be a lot of mistakes that would happen within the pricing structure, within the design structure. So in my opinion, could I design a system and price it out? Yes, but the time constraints that come with that and being in front of customers, which if you're a salesperson, the less time you're in the office and out in front of prospects and customers, the more productive you are. It just makes it an easier row to hoe if you have a tag team of a systems engineer and a salesperson, and it seems to be what's working the best for us. So, and I just wanted to touch on one other thing just real quick on the top is being in sales for a long time, the one thing that I recommend to all new salespeople and when you're training your staff is to always make sure that you under-promise and over-deliver. In competitive situations, way too many times do young sales rep promise the moon, so you're selling the dream and then you bring it over to the installation team to install the nightmare, so to speak. So it's just a cautionary tale of making sure you understand and setting the expectation of your customer at all times and under-promising that what you will deliver on and then over-deliver it on the installation team because you've made it easy for them. So, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dieter. And Bethany, how about at your company? What are you guys doing for estimating within your sales departments?
We actually have a similar setup. We have multiple engineering resources here at Dakota Security. So we have a corporate engineering department where all of our salespeople across the organization can submit information about the site and work collaboratively with them to generate proposals. But we also have field engineers which travel to the site with client executives or our salespeople, and their unique technical perspective that they bring to that sales process has been extremely valuable, in identifying potential issues that could come around in the operational deployment of that particular system. So getting somebody with that more advanced technical viewpoint actually out there paired with the salesperson has been extremely beneficial for us. It's just a matter of getting everybody their schedules coordinated and things like that. So we've seen a significant improvement on the operations side in terms of accuracy and developing those proposals. And like was mentioned previously, it gives the salesperson more time to do what they do, which is client relationships and getting out there and having those conversations and developing that stuff. I mean, that's what their skill set is, and the skill set that frankly, we don't have on the operations side, and probably don't have, as much on the engineering side as well. I mean, obviously we have good, relationship skills, but if we wanted to sell, we would sell, and most of our guys don't drift in that direction too often. So I think it's a matter of having that team, comprised of different strengths and being able to work together to, not only sell that solution, but ultimately deliver to those expectations.
Well, we are coming close to 10:30, and I want to be respectful of the audience time. If there are any questions, please go ahead and enter those in your questions box, and we'll go ahead and give those to the committee members at this time. We do have a question. What is your best sales and operations team building exercise that you have participated in? And committee members, feel free to chime in if anybody would like to take that question. I'll just leave it open.
Oh, can I?
Certainly.
Actually, probably the best thing we did is we did an exercise with our entire group where it was not paintball, but the airsoft, which was like paintball, and we actually had an airsoft team building exercise, and it was operations against sales, and then sales and operations together. So that was probably the most fun and one that I've ever done in my years of sales.
Interesting. Any other committee members? Did you have any unique team building exercises you'd like to share?
I have one, and it's not as fun as paintball, but one thing that we were implementing for a while, because a lot of times sales and operations and the install team, we don't get to talk that often, right? And so what we were doing was we had a monthly meeting, and we'd meet at like a bagel shop or something, and we'd have project leads, salespeople, no managers, just the project managers and sales, and we'd meet for an hour, have coffee and bagels, and just kind of discuss jobs that we're on or things that they're finding out in the field, or just to kind of have a one-on-one conversation of sales versus operations, what we can do to help each other, and doing that on a monthly basis. And it was never aggressive. I mean, everybody's cordial and nice to each other, but it was really I think it was advantageous because you guys kind of hear the other side, so kept you in front of everyone, because sometimes you don't see people for things like months, so it was just kind of nice to do.
Okay. Well, looks like we're right at 10:30, so I want to thank all of our panelists today for sharing your thoughts and processes with the audience, and audience members, thank you for tuning in. If you have anything that the committees can address that would help your organizations, please let us know. Reach out to us. We're hoping to hold more of these discussions as time goes along. We really want your input. So after today's webinar, when you close out the system, you will be presented with a survey, and in there you can give some of your feedback for today's session, and that's where you can also tell us what resources we could put together that would help your teams. Again, thank you everybody for participating. We greatly appreciate it.